So, as you all know by now, the Ocarina of Time remake was announced at the last Nintendo Direct. So today I want to go over my first impressions, my almost guaranteed hopes, my realistic hopes, and then my unrealistic hopes. So to start with my first impressions, I will admit I was weirded out when I first saw that shot of Link. But overall, after it's been sitting with me for well over a week at this point, I think I like the new direction and Link's design. Link's design is inherently very close to the artwork and the original game. And overall, I don't think that making the game darker will remove the charm of the original game, in my opinion, because already the original game was already pretty dark, a lot of muted colors, in my opinion, and here, I think they will do that again for the entire game, but it does keep it more truthful to the original, and it gives it a sort of dark fantasy vibe, which kind of reminds me of Lord of the Rings, and so Twilight Princess, which is my favorite video game, so obviously, I'm happy about that. I think it's good, and even though we haven't seen much for now, I think it's going to look pretty decent, and also, I think we can all admit that Shadow Temple, Bottom of the Well is going to be very, very scary if it's all in this style. It's going to be something to go through. Anyway, let's get to my hopes. So, I think what's almost guaranteed at this point is an orchestrated soundtrack, because what we heard in the trailer, I'm pretty sure was orchestrated. I have a decent ear, I'd say, and I'm pretty sure that was orchestrated. And so that would mean that we will get normally the whole soundtrack orchestrated, which would be fantastic, because if you did not know, Ocarina of Time 3D on 3DS did not have an orchestrated soundtrack. It was just the same one with a bit of an updated sound, I'm pretty sure. They're very similar if you listen to them. So here we're gonna actually get these songs remade in a more modern age, and I think it'll sound very good because of hearing what the Zelda team has been making in the past. I know the Wild era has been pretty middle of the road in OSTs. They have some very good songs and some that just you don't remember them. But the reality is that the ones that hit hard, you remember them, and they are very good arrangements. And so I do think that if they have the same team, they can do something great with an already fantastic OST. I'm mostly excited for Gerudo Valley. I think a lot of people are. If they do the new arrangements well, Gerudo Valley will be even better, hopefully, than the 25th anniversary CD. And if you haven't heard that version of Gerudo Valley, you have to listen to it. It is really, really good. If the whole OST can have that quality throughout the whole game, that would it would make it probably the best OST I've ever heard. Second of all, some people might think this is not actually that guaranteed, but a rebuilt Hyrule Field. What I mean by that is that the original Hyrule Field in both Ocarina of Time and Ocarina of Time 3D is really barren. I think we all know this. The Hyrule Field has nothing. There's nothing to do there. And it's not inherently wrong on the Nintendo 64, because the only point of it was just to connect all the areas. But in the modern age, you can't just have a big open field and say, well, there's nothing here. Just walk through it. It just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. They're going to have to do something about it. And I do think that they're going to try to fix a lot of the original game's problems, and this is one of the biggest issues, is that Hyrule Field has nothing to do. It's just, it feels like filler sometimes. I don't like slandering on Ocarina of Time, but Hyrule Field is it's just not that good. And seeing a modern Zelda, we know they can do a lot. I don't want tons of Korok seeds and that type of stuff. I want something to give me a reason to go through this world. I don't know, add more enemies than just P-hats or something, or Star Children at night. add some side quests that force you to find some new grottos in the areas, but then you'd have to make grottos easier to find. But anyway, that's different. That's a different problem. Third of all, I do think Master Quests will be included. It seems obvious, but once again, that depends on how much of a remake this is. If it's a reimagining, they might make a Master Quest, but it'd be a different one. But if it is just a one-to-one remake, then they have to include Master Quest, because Master Quest is really, really good. Actually, it's just a second quest with harder dungeons that are actually difficult. So I would really, really like to have Master Quest included. And then, lastly, I do think we will get expanded lore. I'm thinking mostly about the Sheikah, even though nowadays we've got a bit more lore on the Sheikah in the modern era. Back in more of the Ocarina of Time era, we don't have much information about the Sheikah, except that Impa's the last one, and that Kakariko village was their village. So I do think we're long overdue for some new Sheikah lore, and I'd also want a more expanded lore for the 7-year gap between Child Link and Adult Link, because what happens between there, all we know is Ganon takes over. The 7-year gap, we don't know much about what happens in there. I'm not asking to make it playable, I'm just asking to add context to it, to have some characters explain like their experience going through that, like their experience fleeing from the market to Kakariko. I think that would just already, that little dialogue could already add so much to the world building of the game, because it would also make the world feel much more alive, and its characters would feel much more alive. It's a very small thing to do, but it would help a lot. Okay, now we can move on to what I think are realistic hopes, but I wouldn't be surprised if they weren't there, basically. First on this list is changed dungeons. Changed dungeons, there's a very high chance that this actually happens, because everyone knows the original dungeons. The original 9 dungeons, so many people have gone through them, and it's very familiar. I wouldn't be surprised if they keep the idea of it. For example, Water Temple. They make a new temple still based off of the 3 water levels, and based off of the same idea, having lots of keys and kind of weird corridors all coming back to the same area. But just a different, not particularly design, but different layout. And not in the Master Quest way, where they keep the same rooms but rearrange the rooms. I mean new rooms, basically. I don't want to do similar puzzles. I want a new experience, but once again, I do think there's a high chance that that actually happens, because this looks like to be a pretty big remake. So I wouldn't be surprised if it happens, but I also don't think it's a guaranteed. Second, an expanded world. By expanded world, I mean adding to Hyrule Field, or adding a part behind the Shadow Temple, or adding a bit to Death Mountain, just adding small areas, kind of how Echoes of Wisdom added so much to the outskirts of the Link to the Past Hyrule, where you got Death Mountain, well, expanded Death Mountain with the Gorons, and then the desert where they explored slightly south of the desert where there were the Gerudo there. And then there were the Zoras in northwest, I think, east? Northeast, I don't know my east and west, sorry guys. And then south you had Deku Scrubs. You had the Deku Scrubs in Faron, which were all added regions, and I think they can do something very similar in Ocarina of Time. And in that area, of course, new side content, obviously, which is the next point. This also comes back to the rebuilt Hyrule Field, how new side content can really help giving a point to Hyrule Field, especially if they expand it. It will need some new side content to give a reason, because you can't just expand for no reason. Anyways, this one is maybe almost unrealistic, but new dungeons, but I'm mostly thinking about cut dungeons, so mostly light temple. I don't know how they'd fit it in, but they could do it right after you pick up the Master Sword. They make you go through a small mini dungeon, like Ice Cavern, but called the Light Temple. And I think it'd be very interesting and it'd add quite a bit to the game. But that, of course, you can say it's realistic or unrealistic. I personally put it in realistic because since it's cut content, I'm taking an example, the original Xenoblade Chronicles, which I've only just started playing, but I know the remake on Switch, when they made DLC for it, well, free DLC, they put the cut content of that game as the post-game, basically, as the post-game of the remake, and I'm not saying add Light Temple as post-game. It'd be nice if they implement it, but new dungeons could also mean post-game and that type of stuff. Anyways, now for the unrealistic hopes. This is probably absolutely not gonna happen, but a reimagined world and story, so basically not the same layout at all. A completely different world, basically, and that also includes changing Kakariko Village to make it more of a village instead of 5 houses. Sorry, pretty sure it's 6 houses, but add more houses, add more life to it, basically. And that also means for Goron City, for the markets especially, when it needs to be expanded. And the world basically means Hyrule Field. I mean, yes, it's iconic, but I mean, they could change it completely. I know, basically, I've been saying either rebuild it, expand it, and now I'm saying throw it out the window, make a new one. That would be the best case scenario, because inherently, Hyrule Field is useless. I'm sorry, but Hyrule Field does not play a big role, except for making the world feel big, obviously. But you can change the whole area, and it won't remove that feeling. And I do think they can make it much more interesting, but of course that's probably not going to happen. And reimagined story it's more complicated, I think. It'd be basically having the same plot ideas as the original game, but changing how you go about doing it all. So basically, you don't particularly have to go through inside the Great Deku Tree, and then Dodongo's Cavern, and then Jabu Jabu's Belly. They could change it around and have it be different, have a different race, have the Sapphire. I'm not saying that that's the best option, but that's something that they could do that'd be actually very interesting. Now, of course, it'd mean in retcon the original, and we don't want that. Anyway, post-game. I briefly mentioned it in the realistic hopes with new dungeons, but more specifically, how about a post-game that connects to Majora's Mask? That's a pretty cool idea, but obviously I'm absolutely not expecting this, but you've got to admit, having a post-game that goes through of how Link went to warn Zelda about Ganon, and then go back to the forest, to then get lost somewhere in the Lost Woods and end up in Termina. It doesn't, I'm not meaning include Majora's Mask, just have it connect, have a better connection between the two. I think that'd be really cool. It doesn't have to be long, it can be very short, but it'd be very interesting in my opinion. Then last on this, probably one of the most unrealistic things, maybe not, I mean you tell me, but revamped combat. Basically change the combat system. It's not bad in Ocarina, it's just, it's not that interesting. I'm especially thinking Stalfos. The Stalfos of the game are just, well, Dekuna and Jump Slash. That's it. And then Iron Knuckles, which are supposed to be really hard enemies, it's just Jump Slash, Jump Slash, Jump Slash. It's not that interesting of a combat system. It was very good for 1998, and it still holds up. And I think if the remake kept that whole system, it wouldn't be bad. I just think they could make the game so much better if they added a combat system similar to Twilight Princess. Twilight Princess's Dark Nuts are so interesting to fight because of the amount of abilities you have. For example, you have Helm Splitter, you have Backslice, and you can use all of those to defeat Dark Nuts in a very, very satisfying way, in a very cool way, obviously. And if they could add a system to that in Ocarina of Time, I think it'd be really interesting. It would probably mean revamped enemies as well to accommodate the new system, but it'd probably make the whole combat look a bit better in the modern age and less boring. But anyway, that's all of my hopes, and I hope all of it ends up being true, but obviously it's not gonna happen. But hey, tell me what you think, what your hopes are, what your first impressions were in the comments below. I would love to read it, and if there's something I missed in the guaranteed part, tell me and I could make a follow-up with more guaranteed stuff. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.